majority of the minutes, the last time we met was in December, and I chaired that meeting, so I think it's your opportunity.
Okay, that would be, I believe, the board president, correct?
Oh, did you already change?
We changed in January, yes.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
Sorry. So that would be President Ryering. But thank you for the reminder.
He's a member of the Liaison committee, so that worked out well.
Perfect, yes.
We don't have a full complement of attendees here yet, do we?
Is Carol on?
I'm present.
Hi, Carol.
Hello.
All right, so do we have a quorum? Should I start the meeting?
We have a quorum of the Liaison.
Okay, all right, great. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Nancy Ryering. I'm president of the Harbor District this year. And first thing on our agenda is brief introductions around the table. Jim, would you like?
Can we do a roll call first?
We need a roll call.
A roll call, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong page of the agenda. All right, here we go, sorry. Call to order, I call this meeting to order. This meeting of September 28th, 2020. Joint liaison meeting between the City of South San Francisco and San Mateo County Harbor District. Roll call, please.
President Ryering.
Present.
Vice Mayor Adiego.
Here.
Commissioner Corrali.
Present.
Councilmember Matsumoto.
Present.
Great, welcome everybody. So we're going to start with welcome again. Welcome everyone to today's meeting. We'll do brief introductions. I've already given mine. How should we proceed? Through Zoom video feed order or?
Point of order, don't we need agenda review and then remote public comments?
Yeah, I've never chaired one of these meetings before, and please tell me what the agenda review consists of. Do I just read the matters for consideration discussion, or how does that go, Carol?
Well, at our council, it would be the city manager. Since it's you, it would be your director that would go through agenda review.
Great. So I think that would be Jim Pruitt. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Jim, do you mind doing an agenda review?
President Ryering, yes. This is Jim Pruitt, General Manager of the San Mateo County Harbor District. The agenda under review for today will be a motion after welcoming and introductions will be a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of December 12th, 2019. We'll be receiving a presentation on the vision of for the Kilroy Oyster Point development. We'll be reporting on expanded Oyster Point Marina ferry service and improvements. We'll be making a presentation on the Oyster Point Marina fuel tank and fuel system station removal project. We're going to receive a report or provide a report from the San Mateo County Harbor District capital improvement projects at Oyster Point. Then a joint report from the city manager and general manager on the 2020 Oyster Point Marina annual report, committee discussion and comments, and then close it out.
Great. Thank you very much. So now, matters for consideration discussion, item number 1, welcome and introductions.
President Ryering, if we can remote public comments first and then move to welcoming and introductions.
Sure, of course. Are there members
yes,
of the public that wish to comment?
There were no emails for remote public comments.
All right, thank you very much. So that should have been on our agenda under agenda review, I guess. All right, then matters for consideration discussion. Are we there? Are we at the welcome and introductions? All right.
We're finally there. Yeah.
All right, I'm Nancy Ryering still. Who would like to go next? I don't know which order we should proceed in.
I'll go next. I'm Virginia Chang Corrali, Vice President and Secretary of the Harbor Board.
Thank you, Virginia. Why don't we round out the San Mateo County portion here with Jim Pruitt.
My name is Jim Pruitt. I'm the General Manager for the Harbor District.
Great, thanks, Jim. Carol?
Carol Matsumoto, Councilwoman, City of South San Francisco.
And Matt?
Hi, this is Matt Rubel, Principal Engineer with City of South San Francisco.
And Yujun?
Hi, I'm Yoon Jun Kim, Public Works Director for the City of South San Francisco.
Great. And we have Christina Fernandez is the only other video feed here.
Hi, yes, and I'd also like to mention that in the room with me, I have the Vice Mayor Mark Adiego, and our City Manager, Mike Futrell.
Oh, all right, great. Do they wish to speak at all to introduce themselves or?
Well, I think, Ms. Ryan, I think this is Mark Adiego, and I'll take another opportunity to speak when we get deeper into the meeting. Thanks.
Great. All right, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. All right, the next item for consideration is, do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of December 12th, 2019?
I'll move.
That was Virginia made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the table. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Diego?
Yes.
President Rayering?
Yes.
Councilmember Matsumoto?
Aye.
Commissioner Corrali?
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item, item number 3, is presentation on the vision for Kilroy Oyster Point development. And doing the presentation, we'll have Matthew Griffin and Kilroy Realty. Is that correct?
That is correct. Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to thank Mike Futrell and the Board of Commissioners for having us join you today. Christina, I don't know how it'll work as far as slides, if there's a screen share or how we'll be going through the deck of slides that we sent over to you. I'm not getting any audio.
Christina? Oh.
I think she's running over to the mic right now.
Hi, sorry about that. I can run them for you, or I can have you upgraded to panelists such that you can run it yourself, whichever you prefer.
Let me see if I can. Yeah, if you'd like to, I guess I could just share my screen. Does that work? I can just pull them up off of my account. Yeah, that works perfectly. Yep, thank you. Okay. And then Christina, while I've got you, the only other thing is Jonas Voss, our Senior Vice President of Development, was supposed to have access at least to comment as well during Q&A. And he is not able to do so. It sounds like I've been texting with him, but apparently his Zoom doesn't allow him to do it based on whatever designation he's got.
Hello. I just promoted him to a panelist.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. Well, in that case, let me just quickly see if I can pull up the presentation. Thank you for your patience. Let's see here.
And while you have the presentation ready, I just want to comment that we do have a person from the public that would like to speak during the public comment portion for this item.
I'm not able to see any hands raised here.
We don't have the hand raise function activated when we had residents register for the meeting, and when they register, they have the option to choose if they would like to speak on certain items on the agenda, and this person chose to speak during item 3.
Oh, all right. So at what time during the presentation should they speak?
typically they speak after the presentation.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just bear with me here for a moment. I'm just trying to sign in to make this work, but I'm actually having some difficulty with that. I'm going to have to, Christina, my apologies. I'm going to have you run the slides. I don't think I'm able to do so. I apologize for that. I don't know if that's something that you'd be able to do. And while the slides come up, let me just give a quick introduction. Again, my name is Matt Griffin. I'm Senior Vice President, Northern California for Kilroy Realty. A little bit about Kilroy, for those who don't know about us. We're a West Coast real estate investment trust. We're publicly traded. We have roots in Southern California, but in 2010 and have grown to San Francisco, the Bay Area, and then also up into the Seattle region, the greater Seattle region. So we're all on the West Coast. Major markets include San Diego, the greater San Diego area, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, and Seattle. And we focus primarily on creative office development, as well as life science. We're really in kind of 4 verticals. The other 2 would be experiential retail and also residential, which is something we've just been getting into. And all in all, we're about a 24 million square foot portfolio of buildings. About half of that is in the Bay Area, I would say. I think the screen sharing is beginning. Let me know if anyone can see anything yet. I don't see anything just yet, but.
Well, Matt, I promoted you as a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen now, if you don't mind trying.
Sure, let me try that again. Oh, well, I see the screen now. I see my presentation. Let me see here. Someone, Christina must have the slide up. Is that how this is going?
I do, Matt.
Okay, great. Well, I guess that's really the introduction of who we are. I would just point out before we start rolling through the slides is Kilroy Realty is extremely committed to our environment. We're one of the only, I think we're the first real estate company in North America to make a commitment to becoming 100% carbon neutral operations by the end of 2020. We're big into Fitwel certification, LEED certification, Energy Star, all of our developments are 100% LEED Gold or Platinum. We're on NAREIT's Leader in Light Award for the office sector from 2014 through 2020. It's a big piece of who we are as the culture of our company. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that. And with that said, if we want to go to the next slide. Thank you very much. So welcome to Oyster Point, or Kilroy Oyster Point. I know you're all familiar with Oyster Point, but just as you can see along the sort of the bottom of the slide, the buildings that kind of cascade from left to right, that is our project. Big picture, this is a 50-acre development, 50 acres of bay views. We are 4, possibly 5 phases of a project. Ultimately, it'll be between 10 and 12 buildings, roughly 2.5 to 3 million square feet of life science and creative office space. 3 parking structures will be part of that as well, and we've got the Marina in the foreground as well. Next slide is is a breakdown of our phases of the project. And before I even get into the phases of the project, just to give you an idea or a sense of these buildings, the buildings themselves, they're all purpose-built life science buildings. They set up very well for creative office users as well. That's just kind of inherent of what they are. They're 5 to 8 stories. They're 250,000 to 300 square feet, around a 40,000 foot floor plate, 16 feet floor to floor. They set up for terrifically for a variety of lab and office ratios that you find with life science companies. And we can kind of walk through these phases. at the top of your screen, you'll see, or of the image, you'll see N1, Inception. So that's our first phase. And that's a 3-building campus or configuration. It's 100% pre-leased to Cytokinetics and to Stripe, which is a payments company. Cyto has the building on the far right. The other 2 buildings are Stripe. And as you've driven around Oyster Point, that is where you see all of our current construction. And the building on the far right side of that, the Cytokinetics building, I think we just topped out steel on Friday. So it is moving along very quickly, and we're very happy with that. And these leases commence in the later part of 2021. Moving on to the next phase, N2 or Gravitate. That is our upcoming phase. It's the center or sort of the heart of the whole project. It's our biggest phase. It'll be 900,000 square feet, a parking structure, and really the core of our amenity offering. So in this, and I'll get more into the amenities in a moment, but it'll be really kind of the core of the project. And this is something that we intend to start in 2021. Moving along to our Momentum N3 and Pinnacle N4. These are later phases that hopefully we anticipate leasing to hopefully an anchor tenant of phase 2. There'll be 500,000 square feet per phase, so about 250,000 square foot buildings. They'll also have additional amenity space throughout, et cetera. And, so I guess in summary, what we're providing here to the life science community is probably the most scalable project on the West Coast from a standpoint of growth for these life science companies, which is obviously the heart of Oyster Point. Go to the next slide. And this is just a further description of phase 2. I kind of already talked on most of these things, but you can just see it kind of in more detail. Phase 2 is really going to be the heart of the amenities project. And I'll take a moment to talk about something here. And this kind of illustrates it very nicely. When you talk about amenities for projects like this, it's pretty hard to differentiate, vis-a-vis our competition. We've got some great corporate neighbors down the road, some other big developers that are making beautiful projects, but, they've all got food and beverage components, and they've all got, conference rooms and health facilities and fitness. But, one of the most requested thing that we find is open space. And, you'll notice that, as you know, Kilroy is responsible for, I think it's over 2 miles or maybe even more of Bay Trail around our developments. We're already working on it at the kind of bottom left of your screen. That part of the Bay Trail will be completed along with our phase 1. So we're going to be rehabbing an extensive amount of the Bay Trail. And, this obviously would be great for walking, biking, running, just taking a break from being in the office. And the thing we like about this is if you've read Steve Jobs' biography, you'll recall his affinity for taking walks with his colleagues when trying to solve a difficult problem. And I think this is going to be an awesome campus for that type of behavior. And I think that's something that we find more and more, where people want to just take a walk to try to figure things out. Next slide, please. And this is a little more in-depth, the image on the right-hand side of this slide. And this is kind of gets into more nuts and bolts of what our amenity offering is. And I'll give you some high-level thoughts. We're really excited about the direction this amenity strategy is heading right now. We've spent a lot of time talking to leading commercial real estate brokers in every life science market in the country. We've visited countless projects that our competitors are building. And we've really listened to the feedback of our life science tenants when we've asked them the question, what's most important to a campus environment for you? And we think our offering really reflects that feedback. Tenants really want that outdoor collaboration space. It's something that we've heard loud and clear. Again, we feel like we can celebrate it. It's our biggest strength with the Bay Trail and the spacing between these buildings. They also want a really solid food and beverage offering. That's very important to them. It creates a sense of community. Some of the folks down at the Cove have done a really nice job of that, and we plan to just to augment that and to add on with our own twist. And they also want fitness and wellness offerings, so we'll have that as well. One thing to really point out here in on the diagram, you see the sort of turquoise hash marked areas that are called science rooms. And so what's a science room? Really, in short order, this is an outdoor wind protected area for outdoor meetings. And we've designed these to, obviously we've all been to Oyster Point. It's very windy. It's not sometimes realistic to be outside, but I think what we're designing is we're leveraging the buildings where we can and creating areas for some shelter from that wind so people can really enjoy this beautiful area and all the beautiful views. And we're going to design these in a sense that, you've got this meandering kind of quality of weaving throughout the project, kind of providing a sense of discovery. And then just one more comment on this slide, just the other, you'll see sort of our pinkish or reddish amenity area. We'll have some level of F&B or food and beverage and wellness kind of sprinkled throughout the project. And we're still tweaking what that ultimately looks like in the later phases. But right now we do have that in phases 1, and we also will have that in phase 2, and we have some in each phase. All right, next slide, please. And next, we're just going to walk through kind of a series of renderings to give you an idea of what our sense of KOP is really all about. This, as I mentioned earlier, is right off the Bay Trail, looking towards the harbor, part of our initial Bay Trail improvements. And we're going to develop this Crescent Beach. It faces out on the bay. And again, this should just be a great offering for the public. Next slide, please. And this is a view looking from our phase 2, looking south at, and there's a little diagram on top, but it's looking south towards phase 1. And so these two buildings make up what will be the Stripe campus. And they ultimately may have some tweaks. These are some earlier renderings, but that'll be around 430,000 square feet. Next slide, please. And this is probably my favorite shot. This is looking from phase 1 towards phase 2 at again, that kind of center or hub of what we're designing from an amenity standpoint. And you'll notice the sunken amphitheater on the bottom of the slide there. So that'll be great for outdoor meetings. There's some buildings that kind of look like sand dunes off to your left that kind of are adjacent to the parking structure. We don't know if those will ultimately look like that, but the idea is that'll probably end up being a primary F&B component. There'll be a grand staircase flowing through that, actually down to the same level as the amphitheater. So it's going to be a pretty impressive amenity complex there. And then beyond that, it's hard to see from this picture, but there'll be a health and wellness piece as well. Next slide, please. And this is if you're walking up this street, up Oyster Point Boulevard, walking, I guess, west, and if you, in between phases 1 and 2, and you kind of look to your right, you would see our amphitheater. So this is just another shot of that and to show it as a great gathering place. Next slide, please. And this is looking down Oyster Point Boulevard, actually looking south from phases 3 and 4. You can just catch a piece of our phase 3 parking structure to the left. And then that's basically phase 2 is what you're looking at in this image on the right-hand side. You'll see some parts of the park and things like that. And next slide, please. And this is one of those where the folks are sitting here. This is part of that science room that we mentioned, or one of the science rooms. So you can see a lot of big trees, a lot of protection from the wind, and it really is set up so people can have smaller meetings. There'll be tables and chairs and things like that as well for a little bit bigger meetings. And then in the background, the sort of circular structure you can pick out in the middle of the screen. That sits between two of the life science buildings, and that will end up being part of our fitness and wellness offering, and it'll be multi-story and should offer an area for people to exercise outside and for meetings and things like that. Next slide, please. And this image is kind of at the north end of phase 2 along the Bay Trail or next to the Bay Trail. It's one of the little science rooms off to the left and some off to the right, hard to see. But this is just a great shot of the Bay Trail looking out at phases 3 and at phases 4. And next slide, please. believe this is our last image, and this is looking at our marina, and you're looking from the bay, just north of our marina, looking back towards phases 4 on the left, phases 3 right after that, and then back towards phase 2. So we're really excited about how some of these have turned out early on in our renderings. And that is all I have today. We had some appendix information that I don't know that we need to really go through, but I can reserve it in case it would be helpful with any questions for the group. And with that, I just wanted to thank the committee, and any questions, we're happy to help.
Great, thank you very much, Matt. So I see Carol Matsumoto, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much. Obviously, this is a sea change from what we had from the previous developer. Matt, you guys have done a beautiful job. Thank you very much.
Oh, Carol, thank you so much.
I have just 2 questions, okay, for you. On your F&B, I know many of the biotech, they prefer to keep that closed to public. Will you be opening up some of that? When you referred to another one, I'm assuming you were making reference to Foundry, where they allow public to participate. I don't expect all of the F&Bs to be open to the public, but would you have some of yours open to the public?
That is the goal, Carol, right now. We're designing these much like, I think, a Foundry and Lux type feel, where the public does have the ability to enjoy it. And, I think that we're certainly open to it. That's the direction we're heading now. And so I think at least some aspect of it would certainly be open to the public. For instance, in phase 1 right now, there's an F&B component that will be offered, as soon as it's open, which will be once we get our operator up and running, 2021, 2022. So I would anticipate that sort of continuing on with other phases, unless something, kind of crazy came up. But that's our goal at the moment.
Thank you. And then my last question, and I know you know who some of your occupants will be, et cetera, et cetera. And we as a city are responsible for getting people to and from once they've arrived at Oyster Point. Other than that, have you any idea how your, I should say, tenants or companies tend to get their people? Are they going to be coming from San Francisco, East Bay? And I know it's a little premature because not everyone has signed leases yet. You're not even fully built. So right. Have you taken that into consideration so we can prepare for that as a city?
Certainly. And I'll start off with an answer, and then if Jonas might have some add-ons to that. But it's something that is a continual work in progress. We are working very, very closely with our existing tenants, both Cyto and Stripe. Good news with Stripe, which is the larger of the 2 tenants, as they plan on leveraging public transportation as much as humanly possible. And whether that's, I think that'll be a combination of kind of everything available. We're also, as many of our other fellow builders in the area, talking openly with the Genentechs of the world around, trying to come up with transportation solutions that are not redundant and that actually have, some sustainability to them. So we're not there yet, but we're working very, very hard, and we obviously understand the challenges that are associated with it, and we're putting a lot of resources, time, and effort into that.
Thank you.
So more to follow.
So if I could, this is Mark Adiego. Can I ask Mr. Griffin a question, Ms. Ryer?
Go ahead.
So back to your slide number 12, which was the Bay Trail view and the coastal meadow. The Bay Trail there is very impressive. And before I ask the question, I just want to mention that our Bay Trail is complete. I think it's 5.5 miles from Brisbane all the way to the airport. And so it looks like this is a very wide. Are you enhancing what was there to a great degree?
Jonas, are you able to comment?
Yeah.
If you can hear me, grabbing that one.
Yeah, this portion will be 20 feet wide. So the existing Bay Trails, both in front of your current marinas now, that'll be much higher. It's being rebuilt. This section of Bay Trail will also serve for emergency vehicle access. So that's the width. The width is, you know, obviously wide, and it's wide enough for fire trucks if needed.
Okay. Interesting use. And then what is the narrowest of what you're providing? The narrowest?
Yeah, the entire trail we're building, I believe it's all this width. This is for phases, this supports phases 3 and 4. The exact width, I don't remember offhand. That's being built as part of our phase 1, but that's a little more standard Bay Trail width. I don't remember if it's 12 feet or otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Am I missing anybody? No? All right, good. All right, well, thank you. Thank you again, Matt. I really appreciate that presentation. It's really interesting to see what we have in store out there.
Well, it's our pleasure, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks again. All right. Moving on to the next.
I'm sorry, President Waring, we still have that public comment for this item.
I'm not sure how to identify who
I can
speak.
It's her name is Roberta Prohaska. Let me go ahead and unmute her so she can talk.
Great, thank you.
Hello, Roberta. Can you test the audio, please?
Hi. Yes, this is Roberta. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for letting me chime in here. I really appreciate it, and was getting a little frustrated with all these Zoom meetings. I know how to work Zoom, but I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand, or any of that seems to have been turned off. But anyway, thank you for the presentation. It looks like a wonderful, beautiful complex. I do have some questions and concerns, though, that I would like to bring to your attention. The trail, the Bay Trail, is wonderful. I go down there almost every weekend and walk it, and hoping to get a bicycle so I can start tooling along on a bicycle as well. And my question is, who is going to be responsible to maintain that Bay Trail? My big concern is, with a lot more people going down there, is that we're going to see a lot more trash. And right now, when I'm down there, there are only a few trash bins available, and they're always overflowing. And as you know, it's very windy down there, and that trash just flows straight into the bay. That's a huge concern of mine.
I think, well, thank you very much, Roberta, for your comment. I think that we certainly will be providing the appropriate amount of trash receptacles to help maintain the area. And as far as the responsibility for overall maintenance, Jonas, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's two parts. There's two answers. The Bay Trail is being built now is on city property. And then and Trail may be able to address the specifics on the funding to maintain it, but that'll be a city asset for the public. The slide that we were last looking at, the wider one on phases 3 and 4, will be Kilroy property and Kilroy maintained. So it's both, depending on where.
And that will
Hi,
be
Roberta.
in their contract.
This is Yoon Kim, Public Works Director. Jonas is correct. The adjacent property owners are required to maintain the Bay Trail. The city does work with the adjacent property owners when there are issues. And those portions where the city is the adjacent property owner, we will maintain that.
Oh, okay. So are we enforcing that? Because if you go down there right now, I'm sure you'll find trash strewn about. So it's a big concern, and I think whatever we're doing now isn't quite enough.
Roberta, if you don't mind leaving your contact information so I can work with you on that, because we work with our Parks and Rec department and code enforcement when the adjacent property owners are not abiding by their responsibilities.
Okay.
I'll reach out to you.
Okay, we'll take that offline. And then my other question is, well, in response to Kilroy, I really appreciate that you're so eco-friendly in both your building and construction. And all of these bay views are going to be wonderful for all the people working in these offices. However, living up here on Sign Hill over these last years, my personal view of the bay has been deteriorated. So now instead of seeing the sunrise, I see buildings, I see corporate buildings. And I just don't think that's quite fair. And to this point, the buildings I'm wondering if we really need 7 to 8 story buildings, considering especially now that more and more people are going to be working from home.
Well, thank you again for your comment, Roberta. You know, as far as the need for the buildings, I think, you know, as developers of life science real estate buildings, I mean, we've certainly taken into consideration a number of factors when designing these buildings, both from an ecological standpoint, from a tenant needs standpoint. You know, in an office building setting, those buildings could be as much as 3 times the height of a life science building. I think that what makes it nice to have, or what's great about Oyster Point and the life science community is that they really can leverage these sort of smaller, more you know, smaller buildings, and we hope that will be helpful for the community and for people's, you know, protecting people's views and things like that. But we certainly have the demand right now, as evidenced by our first phase, that there are people that are still going to be working in an office environment, and scientists in particular can't really work from home. They need to be in the lab. And so we do have, you know, there's a lot of the life science tenants out there are some of the most active in the real estate market right now because they still have to proceed with plans and really help with a cure for COVID and things like that.
Understood. And it seems to me that we're putting businesses before people. And I just don't feel that's right. As a homeowner and as a taxpayer, I don't like to see these tall buildings going up. And even though 7 to 8 stories might be shorter than some, couldn't we get by with like a 4 to 5? It just seems too much.
Yeah, I think right now we've got the entitlements to build what we've shown, and we are working closely with the city and also with BCDC and all the other groups and organizations that have jurisdiction over this land. And I think we're working in partnership to try to do what's right for everybody and provide a thriving industry, more room to grow, and create more treatments for a variety of infectious diseases.
Thank you very much for your questions, and thanks, Matt. Is there anybody else who's a member of the public that has a question that I can't see? Christine, I need to rely on you.
There are no other hand raised.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, great.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks again, Matt. I think we are ready to move on to our next agenda item here, which is a report regarding expanding Oyster Point Marina ferry service and improvements. And Mike Futrell is going to be our presenter.
Good afternoon, Mike Futrell, City Manager of South San Francisco. So the work being done by Kilroy is not the only work being done in the close proximity or adjacent to Oyster Point Marina. Part of it is expanding the transit and improving that area around what we call the spit, the little piece of land that comes out and at the end of which is the Harbor District's, Harbor Master's office. So we do have a presentation on what we're doing with that. You know, it started with conversations about sea level rise, and there's quite a bit in here about sea level rise, and a recognition that to solve that may cost some $20 million or more, and that the city was going to need to address that. And then a realization, if you're going to spend $20 million on a piece of land, you should probably do something more than just protect it from sea level rise. So from that came the idea of expanded commuter service at this location. And so right now we have 3 teams in the city working together, but somewhat independently. And we'll talk about that. Let's just go through the presentation. So you're going to drive. Here we go. I think some of these pictures may be familiar to those in the room. We do have an issue with king tides in this area. Okay, thank you. We're moving the mic around in this room. But that also dovetails with what do we do with this piece of land? How do we protect it from future sea level rise or landfill subsidence or both, and make the best use of it? So next slide. This is the location. I mentioned the little spit, which would be where the red arrow is. To the far left, you can see the phases. That's the Kilroy development that was just discussed. But the area that we're really focused on is this spit area and how to, number one, solve its current problems, but number two, set it up for success given everything that's happening at Oyster Point. So next slide. So this is some of the visioning that we've done is what if we, yes, fixed it up for sea level rise, but then also made it a real amenity that's going to fit well with the Kilroy development. And right at the end of the spit, the city is in an exclusive negotiating rights agreement and will come to council next month with a purchase and sale agreement for a piece of land right at the end of this spit for a 350-room, 4-star plus hotel. So imagine that you're on the spit looking south. What you're going to see is this amazing hotel, and then to the right, the improved Bay Trail, and then a little bit beyond that, all of what Kilroy just described. So when we're looking at what do we do with this area, it to us is a lot more than just a driveway and a few parking spaces with a building at the end, which is its current what its current use is. Let's bring in smaller water taxis to operate at the guest dock. You step off of that into some sort of amenities building, and then you walk through that. You could have some small retail. It's also a space that could be used for events and functions, which the hotel is very interested in. And then you walk out into this amazing Oyster Point with the hotel and Kilroy right there. So next slide. As far as the water taxi service, it's about a 20-minute ride down from the ferry building to the Marina. Now, this is not WIDA. This is not the current commuter ferry service, which operates east-west. It does not operate north-south. We are in partnership with WIDA on this project, and we are lockstep with them in a joint vision. And WIDA does expect to expand the larger commuter ferry service to South San Francisco. And we are locked in for, Christina, about 3 years from now or so for another ferry, which will, by adding another ferry to the route to South San Francisco, will improve the boarding times. So you could have boarding times of every hour if you have an additional ferry. And we think that will improve ridership on the WIDA side. But ferry taxis are smaller. Consider it more like a bus. So you're going to take a ferry bus for a small amount of money from the ferry building in San Francisco straight down and then back again. So we have, I mentioned the 3 teams. The first team is working the engineering to solve sea level rise and prepare the ground. And that's where we think the largest dollars are going to be. The earth underneath the spit is landfill. So we're going to have to survey where are the edges of the landfill, and what's happening where it intersects the bay, and then what can we do to improve it such that water no longer comes up above there. We cannot just put fill on top, because again, underneath is a landfill, and the weight of the fill will likely just crush it down into the landfill. So it's a unique engineering challenge to, number one, fix the land. And after it is fixed, well, then it should be a wonderful platform for an amenities building, which would then service the water taxi ferries. About 40% of the workforce in Oyster Point lives in San Francisco. Earlier, Kilroy mentioned Stripe. Stripe is moving into phase one with at least 1,000 employees to start with. But Stripe is a global mega fintech company, and they are super interested in the ferry taxi concept. Most of their employees live in San Francisco because that's where they're currently based. And so they're one of our partners in exploring the idea of robust ferry service north-south. Next. This is the hotel that I mentioned a moment ago. This would be really looking at the back of the hotel, well, the southern side. So the Marina would be on the other side of this. So this is real, and we are bringing this to council for the next step going forward. The current pandemic has not slowed down their development because this is probably 3 years away, and they're expecting the hotel industry to have recovered by that time. The next slide just gives you a proximity of where the hotel is to the spit. And again, the hotel makes it interesting because one of the issues with the current WIDA ferry terminal, in the morning it's full coming to South San Francisco, but in the morning when it goes back, it's empty. It's a commuter service. The hotel gives the idea of backhaul, of you could stay at the hotel and then in the morning take a water taxi to San Francisco. So a water taxi in the morning from San Francisco will be full of commuters coming to South City. Then hotels and others can then get on the water taxi and go back. And that's a better business model for water taxis. The second study we're underway with is with Tidelines, and that is the business case on the water taxis. What is anticipated ridership? What is the fare box recovery? Looking at the growth in this area, what is the potential demand to see if there's a business case for that. We all believe that there is a strong business case, but we have to do the real due diligence to make sure that works, and we have private partners that are willing to do that. So next. Got ahead of myself. These are really the three things that are all happening at the same time. One, the market analysis, two, the engineering, and three is the building. And that's the third team looking at what sort of amenities building makes sense there. We don't want to overbuild. We could build Navy Pier in Chicago, but does that match the demand out there? We don't know, but we will. All three of these are now underway, and we'll have answers early next year or in the spring. I'd say the priority is the engineering side, because we do want to get to the business of solving sea level rise and the water inundation during king tides, and that's a precursor to any of this. But at the same time, moving forward with the rest. So the following is a timeline on where we're going: stakeholder engagement for the market analysis, the engineering, and then working on the building itself. And hopefully by March or April of next year, have these studies done so that we can plan out the next phase. Next is the funding side of it, because it is rather expensive. There is still notionally dedicated at the Transportation Authority about $7 million earmarked for South San Francisco for capital improvements related to ferry service. So there's another good reason to tie ferry service to improvement of the spit. Councilmember Matsumoto sits on the Transportation Authority and was instrumental in getting us just a few months ago $350,000 from the Transportation Authority to match with city funding to give us this $750,000 for preliminary design that's currently underway. But we do hope that we'll be able to draw down that $7 million from the TA as part of the cost to upgrade the guest dock and likely some of the amenity buildings and other things servicing the ferry. That's still going to leave some $13 to $15 million missing that we'll have to work on. But I think likely half of that or more I'll be turning to the private businesses in the area like Kilroy, if they're still on the line, Stripe, Genentech, and others that would take advantage of the ferry service, as well as the hotel. So private partners to help us fund this. And then at the end of the day, there'll be a conversation likely with our city council about our obligations with the landfill and what it costs to protect it in the future. But the first step is just to get the feasibility study done, understand how much will this cost, and then lock in on a vision of how can we not just fix up the land so it doesn't flood, but also turn it into something that's a positive for the area that complements all the other great work that's happening there. I will say that in our conversations, Jim with the Harbor District has been excellent. Thank you. We do find him on an unsolicited, just an unsolicited performance review. We do think he's terrific, and we like having him as a partner and someone we can trust and talk with at the Harbor District. And we'll be working with him and others on this project as well. We recognize that through this too, we'll have to find a new home for the harbor master. And it is part of our operating agreement as well as our planning that through this, there would be a new harbor master's office built. It may be in the exact same place. I have to say the building that is out there currently doesn't have a lot of fans in terms of architecture or anything else, so likely tear that down. And as part of the amenities building at the end, some sort of a harbor master's office that's appropriately located so they can see what's happening in the marina there. So that's an update on where we are. I'm hopeful that maybe not by the next time we meet, but certainly by the spring or early summer, we'll have these reports done and we can bring them back to the liaison committee for review. So that's an update on where we are with the spit, sea level rise, and our plans for the future. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Mike. It's really exciting thinking about the opportunities for more ferry service. I had a question about what the capacity is of the water taxis.
Christina, do you know it's about 30 or 40? Right. So I use the analogy of a bus because the Weta Ferry is actually kind of nice. You can walk around. There's a bar service in the afternoon. No, this is basically you get in a bus and it has 40 people, and 20 minutes later you get off the bus.
Right. All right, great. Thank you. Carol Matsumoto, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, since, I just wanted to mention, since you'll be looking for a place for the harbor master, you might want to consider a large enough space so when you hold your district meetings, it could accommodate. You would have a permanent home, one that would have audio, et cetera, and seats. So just wanted to mention that might be a good place for it.
That's a great point, Carol. Thank you. Are there, so again, I'm not able to see if there are members of the public that are interested in weighing in here.
No, there are no comments from the public on this item.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you again, Mike, for your presentation. And the next item on the agenda is presentation regarding the Oyster Point Marina fuel tank and fueling station removal project for the removal of 2 underground fuel tanks, associated piping, and fuel dispensing equipment. And this is Yoon Jun.
Hi, thank you very much. This is Yoon Jun Kim again, Public Works Director for the City of South San Francisco. I would like to provide a very brief overview on removal of the Marina fuel system at Oyster Point. Next slide. As previously mentioned, the City and Harbor District have been collaborating closely over the years on the operation, maintenance, and development of this area. Per the terms of associated cooperative agreements, the city has acquired ownership of the fueling system from the Harbor District in June of last year. The system consists of fuel dispensers located on Dock 7, which is just north of the Harbor Master's office, if you can see that near the top of the vicinity map. These fuel dispensers are connected via fuel conduits about 750 feet to the south, where we have two 10,000-gallon underground tanks, which are located just southwest of Dominic's. Unfortunately, this fueling system is beyond its useful life, and it does not meet current environmental regulations. So the city has hired ACT Enviro to remove the system in collaboration with San Mateo County Health and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Next slide. The city's contractor, ACT Enviro, is in the process of removing the fuel system right now. Currently, the system has been emptied, cleaned, and inerted to make sure that it's stable and not flammable or explosive. The next steps will be the physical removal, soil testing, and backfill. We anticipate that this process should be completed in November, assuming no significant soil remediation is required. Fortunately, alternative fueling stations are located nearby at Brisbane Marina, about half a mile to the north, and at Coyote Point Marina in San Mateo, about 6 miles to the south. So if you're on site, you may notice this work happening by the Harbor Master's office and southward near Dominic's. And this is what's going on. Feel free to contact the city if you want any further updates. Any questions?
Thank you, Yunjun. I don't see any panelists here with their hands raised. Are there any other attendees that I cannot see, members of the public that have questions?
Yes, there's John Ulam, member from the public that would like to speak on this item.
Great,
go ahead, John.
Ulam. Go ahead.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. First, I appreciate the effort to put the meeting on Zoom. The format you're using is really, I don't know, awful. Everybody else allows people to raise hands. This really discourages participation because, you know, what if somebody says something in the middle of a presentation and I want to ask a question about that, but I didn't register last week? So how do I go about doing that? So anyway, every other district is out there would allow people to raise their hands. I think you really need to look at how you're doing things there in South San Francisco. For the public that might still be around, one of the things that wasn't mentioned is how it was that South San Francisco taxpayers came up to be responsible for paying for the replacement or the removal of the fuel dock and the fuel infrastructure. That responsibility was obligated to the previous developer. They were obligated to maintain the fuel docks, keep them open, maintain the fueling infrastructure, and for some reason they did not. At one point, a previous Harbor District manager tried his best to get compliance with the previous developer, going so far as even to threaten stopping the sale of their development rights to the company that has them now. Suddenly, that changed. Tom Matoush, Virginia Chancarelli, the City Council of South San Francisco, Mike Futrell, worked a backroom deal where that obligation was taken from a multi-billion-dollar development corporation and handed to taxpayers. And now you have a situation where the taxpayers are paying to remove a fuel dock and remove all that infrastructure, possibly pay to clean up the mess that should have been taken care of by a private developer. And you won't have a fuel dock there anymore, nor fueling infrastructure. And you're counting on using somebody else's fueling infrastructure. At the same time, you're proposing in your next item to spend $8 million to build bigger docks for bigger boats, who of course use lots of fuel. So that's what's going on for the few people who may have found the time to attend this meeting. This is all being done for the benefit of developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we see any other members of the public that wish to comment?
No, that was the only member.
Great, thanks so much. All right, the next item on the agenda is item number 6, report regarding a presentation on the Harbor District fiscal year 2021 capital improvement projects at OPM, and this is Mr. James Pruitt.
Yes, good afternoon. This is a report on the current and most previous capital improvement projects at Oyster Point and Marina on behalf of the Harbor District. The replacement of docks 12, 13, and 14, which we're obligated to replace by December 31st, 2024, is on schedule. The San Mateo County Harbor Commission approved the capital improvement plan for this fiscal year, including the funding for the replacement of those docks. The request for proposal to perform design and development of construction documents to replace those docks has been issued, and the initial meeting contractor meeting has already taken place. Current rough estimate to complete that project is between $6.5 and $7.5 million. Also under the agreement, the 2000 agreement, the San Mateo County Harbor District is responsible to conduct a survey of docks 1 through 6. And that survey was also again approved in July of 2020 by the Harbor Commission to conduct that survey, and we're on schedule to meet that deadline of December 31st, 2023 to complete that survey. A recent survey of the entrance channel markers, which are a 3-pillar design at the entrance of Oyster Point Marina, has discovered that they are failing and they are in need of replacement. The district has already issued a request for proposal to replace those, and we'll be working towards getting both the entrance markers for the channel replaced in near term. Electrical distribution panels on the main distribution panel on dock 14 was replaced last week, and with the dock 13, it is also scheduled to replace the electrical panels on that. All the electrical panels on docks 1 through 6 were updated in 2018. And further, for docks not in the report but added recently, the central deck boards on docks 12, 13, and 14 were also recently replaced last month at a cost of $15,000. Those are the current capital improvement projects underway or beginning to be underway in the near future at Oyster Point Marina.
Great, thank you, Jim. Do we have any questions on this agenda item? Jonas Foss.
We do have.
Carol, I see your hand up.
Go ahead and take public comments first, okay? And then I'll chime in. Thank you.
All right. Can
yes, we have John Ulam as a speaker for this. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, sir. I noticed that in this document, the district is obligated to replace docks. And I'm wondering how that came about. The Harbor District is an enterprise district. It is supposed to make money on its operations. And the idea was so the taxpayers wouldn't be funding the district. And that hasn't come close to happening yet. And somehow the taxpayers of San Mateo County are obligated to pay for infrastructure owned by the city of South San Francisco. My understanding is that the Harbor District is a management entity in the case of this Oyster Point, that the Harbor District does not own anything out at Oyster Point. So I'm wondering if you could explain to people who might be tuned into this meeting how it is that the Harbor District came to be obligated, and in the process obligated San Mateo County taxpayers to pay for South San Francisco infrastructure. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that are waiting to speak?
No, that was the only one.
Thank you. I think Carol, you're up.
Thank you. You know, I was going through, I printed out your 2020-21 operating budget, which included the 5-year CIP program. And I'm just trying to better understand it because based on this report and the replacement of docks 12, 13, 14, et cetera, and looking at the preliminary CIP budget, I am concerned in as much as last year, South San Francisco was allocated 66,000 versus the other amount that went to Pillar Point. So I don't know how your funding mechanism goes. How is the capital improvement program funded? Because based on just a cursory view of the budget, because I just thought I'd ask you because you guys know better than I do. I'm trying to better understand it because I am concerned. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, thank you, Carol. I don't know if Jim wants to respond to this or Virginia, you're on the Finance Committee.
Commissioner Corrali, I'll respond first and then you can fill in anything that I don't address. Councilmember Matsuda, thank you for the question. This year's or July's review of our capital improvement project and budget, the district looked at how much funding they currently had in our accounts to fund certain projects, and we prioritized those projects based on funding we currently have and not projected future funding. So we had listed Oyster Point Marina docks 12, 13, and 14 as one of the high priorities for the districts to address based on the timeline of the agreement to complete that project by December of 2024. We currently have in our budget approved by the board that funding to move that project forward. And like I said earlier, the RFP has already been issued. Contractors are developing responses to that RFP and so that's kind of the difference before where we approved the capital improvement project, but not necessarily the total actual funding mechanism for that project. This year, we approved the funding mechanism along with the priority.
I'll add to that, Carol. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So the last year's budget, this was, I think, improved in June of 2019. Well, I did not vote for it. Oyster Point was allocated $37,800. So once the new finance committee was repurposed, we were looking at everything again. COVID hit, and so we had to readjust our budget and prioritize capital improvement projects, which is exactly what Jim just outlined. But there is definitely more than $37,800 going into the budget versus the $14 million that the previous board president wanted to go to Pillar Point. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but right now what the board has approved is based off of the readjustments for COVID and, hopefully trying to see as far into the future as possible. But as you know, things are changing so much. So right now we've committed to funding what we can, which is what Jim just outlined.
No, thank you, because I feel better about that, because as Jim explained, not only is a project, but the funding mechanism as well. My concern, as we know, everything is political, and as boards changes or whatever, and it got, we were trying to do the funding as best as we can, or we could, and then, as you know, we had to readjust, and this was in June. For this fiscal year when we approved this budget. So that's as of this funding is as of this a few months ago when we approved it. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jim, for that presentation. And now we are moving on to item number 7. Report regarding the 2020 Oyster Point Marina Annual Report. Mike Futrell, City Manager, and Jim Pruitt, San Mateo County Harbor District, GM.
So I'll start off. Under the new operating agreement, there is an obligation to once a year provide a report to the Liaison Committee, the center of which is a report on some shared metrics out at Oyster Point. Ironically, one of which is something like, is the trash can empty? But I guess we need to revisit that one based on the public comment earlier today. But we have collaborated with Jim and present a joint report which hits the highlights as required by the operating agreement. So I don't know if Jim Pruitt, you'd like to add something to that?
Oh, I'm already unmuted. I apologize. Trying to unmute myself and I was unmuted. No, it was a joint report put together by Mike and I. All operation parameters under the agreement were met, and we continue to work together as a team to improve Oyster Point Marina for the betterment of both South San Francisco and for the Harbor District and the people who use it.
Happy to answer any questions on the report.
Any questions from panelists or members of the public?
Yes, we have John Ulam wanting to speak on this item as well. Go ahead, John.
I guess I'm unmuted.
Yes, we can.
Yes, you're on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Matsumoto, you might be interested to know that the reason the budget was the way it was prior years was that Nancy Raring voted for it. She voted for those exact budgets that you have a problem with. That was back when she was asking for Tom Matoush to resign. Nancy has changed her position on a lot of things, and now she's okay with it. But that's what happened and how your budget got slashed so much. Nancy Raring was a big part of that. I'm looking at, and I can also stand, Matsumoto, why you're concerned about where's the money going to come from. You heard Ms. Corrali more or less babble about COVID. Well, COVID has had absolutely no imperishable impact on the revenue or anything that's going on currently at San Mateo at the Harbor District. And it's not projected to have anything in the future other than the economic consequences, which nobody has a clue on, yet you're all willy-nilly ready to spend money that you do not in fact have. And the reason why you should be concerned about this project ending up being half done is just, you just look at the operating revenue statements, I guess this would be your profit loss statement for your enterprise operations out there at Oyster Point. As you can see, if you look right there at the bottom, operating income, the district has subsidized operations, or actually San Mateo County taxpayers have subsidized operations to the tune of about 1.2 million, let's make it $1.3 million for the last 2 years. That means they're losing money on the operations they currently have. There's no reason to expect that that's going to change. Not even if you build bigger fuel or bigger docks for folks to berth at, when you're not even sure that there's going to be a lot of people who can afford 60-foot yachts, which is what those docks are meant to be. And I can see that your developer is already eyeing the use of those docks to move everybody out of docks 1 through 6 over there. Everything is being done for the benefit of the developer, not for the benefit of San Mateo County taxpayers, not for the benefit of South San Francisco taxpayers. All of this is about is subsidizing a marina that makes a showcase for a property developer so he can increase the rents and what they can obtain for their office space. The recreational use has been diminished because of the the horrible disaster that is currently going on out there, and it's going to be going on out there for 4 or 5 more years. It's been impacted by the fact that you no longer have a fuel system out there. And it's going to continue to be impacted because the Harbor District doesn't really have the money to be doing this. They've already had to cancel repairs that they need to do at Kilroy Point that are worth millions of dollars that involve the livelihood of people who work for a living on the ocean. It's not a game for them. It's not recreation. Yet we're spending all this money, San Mateo County taxpayer money, on infrastructure that is owned by South San Francisco that is operating at a loss. Just makes no sense. Could you explain this to the taxpayers of the county and to the taxpayers of South San Francisco, why this is worth it? Why are you continuing to subsidize this failed marina? Thank you.
Christina, did I hear a timer go off?
Yes, that was the 3-minute timer.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. All right, any other public comment or panelist comments? No. All right, we'll move on. Let's see, so committee discussion and comments. We're nearing the end of our agenda here. Are there any other final comments from the panelists? Questions or comments on today's presentations? Carol Matsumoto.
Thank you. I don't wish to get into he said, she said with Mr. Ullum, but just for the public record, you know, developers and the property, that all goes to taxing agencies that the county, the harbor districts, the cities, et cetera, benefit from. That is part of a revenue stream. Our developers have come forth on many things and helped both the county, on city, on public transportation when we've reached out for them for their help. They're not the bad guys. They've helped, you know, give us food to help feed those at-risk families when they lost their jobs. Development here at Oyster Point and other places throughout the county provides jobs, and not only for the scientists, but for the at-risk family, the employees, our residents, you know, regardless of what kind of job. So there is benefit. It's not all one-sided. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Virginia? Yes, Virginia.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mike and Jim, for the presentation, and Yoon-Jun, and also Matt. We appreciate this, at least I do for sure. I just want to make sure that as we move forward, that Jim and Mike continue with their collaboration and, you know, just kind of keep everyone apprised of what's going on and, you know, make adjustments as needed. I mean, this is an ongoing thing, and I know there's a plan, and I think that a lot of people are excited about the plan. You know, the public goes beyond the panelists or the attendees in this room or in this meeting. So, and I'm sure we'll hear from people who support it and many people who don't, or vice versa. I mean, either way, I think that the main thing is that the general manager and the city manager should continue their collaborative approach and just keep an eye on things. Thank you, Mike and Jim, and everyone else who made these presentations possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. I want to second everything that you've said. Our future success here working together is going to be dependent, especially during these challenging times. It's going to be dependent on Mike and Jim working together collaboratively. I really appreciate your doing this challenging work. And I also want to thank all of our presenters today, and thank everyone for your time. It's been a really helpful and informative meeting. We don't have, oh, Virginia, go ahead. You're muted.
Well, no, I was going to say, if there's no public comment, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second? Well, I'll second that motion. Roll call.
Vice Mayor Diego.
Yes.
President Rearing.
Yes.
Councilmember Matsumoto.
Aye.
Commissioner Corrali.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, Nancy.